debate, and we're going to make a decision and wrap it up. So, with that said, I know you have, I'm going to come down the line, but I'm going to kick it off just because. No, because I'm a businessman. That's what I do for a living, and I look at business from a different lens than most. And I am pro-business in Vallejo. I'm pro-labor. I know Stephen Hallett and I know John Riley. I know both sides of the argument. I do. And at the end of the day, I have to vote my conscience always. And I don't worry about what people say or do, because as long as I can sleep at night, I'm okay with that. I look at staff's recommendations, and I've read it thoroughly, and we've been living with this for a long time. I do not buy an argument that we need a final EIR, because I think we're pretty smart up here to know what we don't know and ask appropriate questions. And we've had enough time between Monday and tonight to decide if there was additional information we needed that we would otherwise get in the final EIR, and I can't find any compelling reason. And it comes down to quality of life. And I have one rule that I never break when I do real estate deals, is would I put my mother there? Every time I've ever done a real estate project, I make that decision before I put a tenant in. Would I let my mother live here? And I don't think I would. I just don't. Because of the trucks, because of the quality of life. And Hakeem Brown said a few things that just stuck out to me that was true. You know, when I drive past poor communities, I see the refineries, I see the freeways, and this type of project would not be approved in most cities that I work in. It just wouldn't happen. Just wouldn't happen. And part of the problem I think we have as a city is we lack imagination, because we say if we don't vote for a project that produces jobs, that we're anti-business, or somehow we're going to suffer long term. I think our suffering comes from lack of imagination. And I think that inside of our city, I think we have to be responsible for our future. I've heard so many things about the former mill, and that was an industry that thrived at that location for many years. But we are living in a different age, and we have to look forward to sustainable industry. And if we approve projects like this, and I think the applicant made a strong case, and I felt that they had a fair hearing. I can't live with it. I'm thinking 20 years, 30 years from now, and I would be disappointed in myself knowing that we put an industry there in our city when we should be progressing forward as a city. And so I'm going to not support this project, and then I'm going to start with Commissioner Placer and come all the way down. And then we'll just come down the line.
Let me start by commending the community for participating in the process, and to those who spoke for the passion of their convictions. Anyone is entitled to their opinion, but not to their own facts. Facts have little bearing on what most people believe. What persuades people is, first of all, how much they want to believe something is true, and second, whether they believe the person saying these things is sincere. Staff assigned itself the goal of convincing the Commission to disapprove the project, with the focus on gathering information to shore up that goal. The resolution, therefore, attempts to persuade the Planning Commission to agree with the staff recommendation. I would rather not so much be persuaded, but rather be informed. For me to make an informed decision, you have to inform me. In that interest, I need complete information, which the draft EIR does not provide. What's happened here tonight are two things. The decision to stop work on completing the EIR, that's one action. I should have asked, but I didn't want to make this too political. When was that decided, and who was it decided by? The second decision made here tonight was the decision to oppose, and I would have asked the same two questions. Both of these are distinct and separate actions, whether the city is within its legal rights or not, whether the city has violated the CEQA process or not. Well, that is something for a judge to decide. In the interest of avoiding costly litigation, however, I would suggest submitting an EIR for consideration and review.
Commissioner Cortez.
Well, certainly this project has brought every member of this community to participate in some way or another. And we know as a community that we need economic development to move forward, to pay for our services. However, in any economic development, the whole point of economic development is for an economic activity to happen. So that's going to be some cost. It's going to be traffic. It's going to be impact into the community. However, we need to find out and be sure that the cost associated with the economic development is compensated by the benefits that a particular project is going to bring. By making that decision and making that analysis, it doesn't make us pro-business or anti-business. It just makes us real. So in my conscience, I cannot support this project. The traffic impact on Sonoma Boulevard does when I looked at the numbers, it really didn't impact me at all, given the infrastructure that it is. It will be a relatively small traffic increase. However, I saw people crossing those streets, and that made it real. Lemon Street, there's no question. It's going to be a mess with the numbers. So there's really no question about that. And pretty much everything boils down to that particular impact. The ERI didn't say anything about any toxic material, didn't say anything that it's detrimental in terms of fugitive particles, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a moot point. It doesn't have, it's not, there's nothing, there's no document that backed any of the claims that the community had. However, in the process of making this project not possible, making the buildings in that area historic pretty much made a very difficult site to develop next to impossible to develop. So when making actions on a city level, on the community, you got to think about the consequences of the actions. So now we're probably going to be stuck with a next to impossible to develop site. But that doesn't change my decision, my point in not being able to support this project.
Commissioner Scoggin.
Well, like others of the commissioners, I've been very impressed at the community's involvement. Certainly the people who were pro the project have mounted intense arguments and brought a lot of technical information to the discussion that I would not have thought to bring. The people on the other side, and like I'm sure all my fellow commissioners, I received copious amounts of emails and discussion. I think it was about 10 to 1 of people opposing as opposed to people who supported. But the most, I guess, compelling part of the process for me was that a lot of the opponents or people who were for the staff position really were extremely articulate and at times almost poetic in their opposing the project, and they're talking about Vallejo and what Vallejo means to them and their worries and concerns about what approving the project would do to this community. My own particular background would more prepare me to look at the sort of physical manifestation of the project rather than following a lot of the technical details about how it operates, what the implications of one or another courses of action or sets of issues that had to be determined. But I pretty much looked in vain for that kind of representations of the physical aspect of this, and I don't think that that's the heart of this project. It isn't what we would get out there if the project were to go ahead. There were a couple of sections that were pretty descriptive that showed the heights of the structures up against the hillside. I walked up on top of the hill and tried to see what I could of what might be visible. It was very hard from being in amongst the trees, but when I looked at the section, it was clear, for one thing, that those are pretty tall structures. The stack in particular gets way up there, but the other two, I think they're two major cylindrical structures. They get up higher than the trees. And when I looked at the EIR trying to see some representations of what the project might be like, there were just a couple. The section that I talked about, and then there were some other kind of long distance views that purported to represent the project out there. But boy, when I tried to see what the section, which was to scale, showed of the heights relative to the trees or relative to the hillsides, which should have been accurate, it was really difficult to see that. But it was not encouraging to me to see how tall and imposing those would be for the people who live right at the top of the bluff. So, like others have said, I cannot support the project.
Vice Chair Kitty.
Well, my father was a small contractor and a carpenter. I was raised in construction. After graduating and becoming an engineer, civil engineer, I worked for developers. I became a developer. I still do work for developers. I was on the advisory committee for the general plan, and this group on the left-hand side showed up to those meetings all the time, whether we had neighborhood meetings or meetings for the public hearings for the advisory general plan. The people opposed or wanted to keep the Mills, Sperry Mills plant as a historical site or just as an industrial site never showed up. Now it comes to, we got jobs to show up, but there's a lot of environmental issues that haven't been resolved and they haven't been mitigated. I look at it as where I was growing up, it was in a blue-collar neighborhood. I had Shell Oil on one side was Martinez, and so this is way before air pollution control boards existed. So we got the fumes from Shell Oil. That wasn't enough. On the other side, we had Phillips 66, or Flying A, which now I think is Tosco, and that, when the wind didn't blow from Shell, it blew from the other direction. So I had all kinds of fumes coming from 2 refineries, and that wasn't enough. I moved to Benicia, and we had Exxon. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still here and still going, but that doesn't solve the problem for the people that have the asthma and have the problems in South Vallejo. And I think you have a health issue and a culture issue. And the other thing, going back to the development issue, when I represented people, and we also had an investment company, and every time we had a project that we were trying to present to the investment company, you always ask, how much is this going to cost? How much is this particular item? We had to go through and we had to have estimates and everything of what was going. When you ask the cost tonight of what the street maintenance is going to be, how much it's going to spend, these answers were not there. And I think that's very, and they said the environmental impact report is going to give us that answer. They should have that answer before they even started the project. So I find that their concerns in relation to the environmental impact report, trying to put it off, does not satisfy me. I think the staff has done a good job in answering those questions, so therefore I cannot support the project, and I will do it.
Commissioner Cecil.
First, I'd like to thank staff. I know they don't think so with the hundreds of questions I've sent them, but I appreciate their trying to answer my questions. Let me say something. I've been told that this project would be the salvation of Vallejo. I've also been told that this project would be the ruination of Vallejo. This thing is so emotional that it's hard to talk to people about it. What our task is tonight is decide whether the economic benefits of this project outweigh the significant unavoidable impacts. And I think people know I've read almost every document. I mean, my big question is this the right industry for Vallejo? Because I think times have changed. When Mare Island was here, I don't think people would have even batted an eyelash. They would have just said, put it in. But I think it's a new day. And some of the things that I've thought about this project, some of the issues are the large number of trucks, are going to increase noise, traffic, and emissions for the neighborhood. I think particularly the EIR doesn't talk about the neighborhood much, but those are the people who are going to suffer the most if there's any suffering. Two, is industrial activity from the plants and trucks incompatible with the existing land uses? You have, rightly or wrongly, Vallejo has allowed residential buildings to go right up to the edge of these industrial zones. And this city has not done a good job. So now what we have, whose rights should we protect? Is it the industry or is it the people who are living there every day? And I think that the truck traffic is going to impact commuters and pedestrians. I think, we have Grace Patterson School. I mean, does that put those kids more at risk, crossing the street and things? And I think despite the discussions today, because I've been caught once or twice, there was some trains running up through American Canyon where the Safeway is. Let me tell you, that backed 29 up for almost a half an hour. It wasn't one or two signals. So depending on the intersection, I don't think the traffic engineers got it right either. It depends which one we're talking about. I also am, and I've had many talks and can't get a straight answer. What's it going to cost the city for the ongoing maintenance of Lemon Street? this city has a history of not putting money into these streets until they're all potholes and things. And the problem is, it's going to cost us a lot more to fix that street than if there had been ongoing maintenance. But I don't think we can hope that they're going to do that. I think they're going to wait until it's so bad, and then probably the costs are going to be significantly higher. I also think Mr. Kinney and I, we both don't feel that kayaks and canoes meet our lifestyle. So I guess I would suggest a little better kind of idea of what you're going to do to mitigate the fact that that part of Vallejo is not accessible. I also think that there's going to be a degradation of the impact of the waterfront. I used to take the ferry every day, and I just don't get it that we have allowed part of. It reminds me of Philadelphia. When you used to come into the airport, the first thing you would see driving out was a pile of scrap metal from the cars being ground up. And in a way, for the people coming to Vallejo, what do we show them first? All of this industrial stuff. I think Mare Island, people don't, it's different. But I think we need to think long term. What do we really want in that part of Vallejo? And I'm also, I'm not an architect, and so I kind of, Mr. Scoggins has talked more about the scale and things, but those are going to be big buildings, and they're going to be tall. And what does that do when you first see them? Is that the impression that you want of Vallejo? And another thing that really concerns me is the health of people in that area. That area has very high asthma rates, and as I said earlier tonight, I don't think that this is a linear thing. The more pollution you put out, I think the curve gets steeper. It just doesn't go up in a linear fashion. Now, maybe I can't prove that, but why does Vallejo have so... Yes, I know we have 80 and things like that. Now we want to even put more particulates, particularly on Lemon Street. I think it's really going to hurt people. And I guess I would just end it with, is this the image we want? Or do we want something different? And these are the reasons why I feel I just cannot vote for this project.
Commissioner Matulak.
First off, I'd like to say I'm honored to actually be up here, to be a decision maker on a project such as this. I'd like to thank both sides for both their compelling arguments. It's been a very difficult decision to make. I come from the architecture, engineering, construction background, so we're used to these ROM or rough order magnitude projections and life cycle projections. I found it very difficult to be able to do something like that on a project like this, just for the fact that because of the information we've been provided with, we weren't able to project out whether it was good or bad for the end or life cycle of this project or the city. So based on the information presented to me as of this day, and it comes down to quality of life, I find it very difficult to approve a project like this, but I'd like to see in the future that we do have the information provided to have a better ability to make a decision with more hard numbers for a project like this, because I don't want to be turning away. I'd like us not to be turning away business just because we don't have the appropriate numbers and the appropriate information available.
Thank you. So I'll make a motion, but I just want to make a couple comments before my motion. I was a little disappointed today when I walked in, and the reason that is because we had a group over here and a group over here, and no one talked. And last week, when I had people stand up, people booed and hissed, and we all have to live together. And in situations like this, we can either keep a divide or we can bridge, right? Because we all want the same things. Everyone wants to work, everyone wants a good quality of life. Whether it's a person that's in labor or not, or a community member or not, we all want the same things for our city. So I just want to make sure that we work hard at developing relationships. And long after this matter is solved or resolved, there are still people in South Vallejo that are suffering. So we can't forget about those people because they still want jobs, they still want fresh grocery stores with the fresh food, and we have to work together to take care of those that are least amongst us. So let's just not forget that, please, and build relationships with people. We don't have to demonize each other because we disagree. All right, so with that, I'll make a motion to move that we adopt resolution to deny major use permits UP 130002 and UP 130010 and site development permits SD 130010 and SD 13-0011. Please vote.
And just to clarify, this is the corrected resolution that you're making a motion to adopt?
Correct.
With the minor changes proposed by staff?
Right. And Scoggin will ask, what does it mean? It means that we accept staff's recommendation to deny. That's what the vote is.
We have 6 ayes and 1 no, so the motion carries.
Meeting adjourned.